The grenade bounced off the bunker and rolled back toward them. For a split second, nobody moved. Then it exploded, close enough to tear metal into flesh. The Japanese machine gun never stopped firing. By that afternoon, the bunker had already killed dozens. Every textbook solution had failed. Every brave charge had failed. And command had quietly accepted the truth. This position could not be taken. Then a farm boy lying in the dirt noticed something no officer, no engineer, no expert had seen. And in the next 2 hours, using a grenade throw the Army manuals never taught, he erased 32 Japanese bunkers. It was April 1944, on a nameless ridgeline in the Central Pacific. The Japanese positions sat above them, dug into volcanic rock, invisible except for the brief flashes of muzzle fire. Every time an American tried to move, the machine gun opened up again, precise, relentless, patient. They had already tried everything: rifle fire, mortars, smoke, grenades thrown the way the manual said they should be thrown. Nothing worked. By mid-afternoon, the platoon was pinned to the earth, bleeding, exhausted, and running out of options. The bunker had been killing men all day, and it wasn't even the biggest one on the ridge. If they couldn't take it, they weren't going anywhere. And if they didn't move, the Japanese would finish them by nightfall. At the edge of the line, pressed flat against the dirt, a farm boy from Idaho watched the grenades fail one by one, and quietly realized everyone was throwing them wrong. By the spring of 1944, the Pacific War had become a meat grinder of concrete, tunnels, and fortified hillsides. Island by island, the United States was advancing toward Japan, but every mile forward came at a cost measured in bodies. Japanese defensive doctrine had adapted. They no longer defended beaches. They defended depth, interlocking bunkers, overlapping fields of fire, positions designed not to win battles, but to bleed attackers white. On islands like Saipan, Peleliu, and later Okinawa, casualty rates climbed to levels that shocked even veteran commanders. Entire companies were being chewed apart by positions no bigger than a garage. American doctrine said bunkers were taken with coordinated fire and grenades. In practice, that meant young infantrymen sprinting uphill under machine gun fire, praying they could get close enough to throw. The math was brutal. A well-built Japanese bunker could survive direct mortar hits. Its firing slit was narrow, angled, protected by logs, steel, and rock. Grenades thrown from outside almost never went in. Most bounced off. Some rolled back. At current casualty rates, infantry divisions were burning through replacement troops faster than they could be trained. Commanders began privately acknowledging a terrifying reality. If this continued, the invasion of Japan itself would be catastrophic. The bunkers had to be cracked, and no one had a reliable way to do it. The Army had tried everything it could think of. Engineers experimented with new explosives. Flamethrowers were issued, but they required men to get dangerously close, often within 10 yards, and operators were immediately targeted. Tanks were brought forward, only to be disabled by mines or hidden anti-tank guns. Doctrine insisted the solution was coordination and courage. Suppress the bunker, advance, throw grenades, repeat. But the bunkers weren't breaking. Officers wrote reports, analysts ran studies, casualty projections were calculated and recalculated. The conclusion was always the same. There was no easy answer. The bunkers were doing exactly what they were designed to do. When junior enlisted men suggested ideas, they were brushed aside. Infantry tactics were not the place for improvisation, command said. The manuals had been written by professionals, by experts. This was modern war, not guesswork. And then there was Private First Class Daniel Mercer. He was not an engineer. He was not a demolitions expert. He was not an officer. Before the war, he had been a farmhand who spent most of his life throwing things, rocks into fields, tools onto wagons, feed sacks into trucks, learning by instinct how weight and angle changed where something landed. Nobody expected genius from a kid who shoveled manure for a living. Daniel Mercer was 21 years old when he landed in the Pacific. He had grown up outside Twin Falls, Idaho, on a small, stubborn farm that barely survived the Depression. His father had taught him how to fix broken machinery with wire and patience, how to throw hay bales without straining his back, how to judge distance without measuring. On the farm, wasting effort meant going hungry. Mercer had never finished high school. When the draft came, he went without complaint. At training, he shot well enough, marched well enough, and kept his mouth shut. He was assigned to the infantry. By the time his unit hit combat, the Pacific heat had already burned the softness out of him. The jungle was loud, wet, and full of rot. Men slept in mud. Food tasted of tin and mildew. The air smelled like decay and cordite. Veterans had hollow eyes. New men learned fast or didn't last. To them, Mercer was just another replacement, another body. On that April afternoon, pinned below the bunker, Mercer wasn't thinking about heroics. He was watching. He saw how grenades hit the concrete lip and bounced. He noticed the angle of the firing slit. He watched one grenade land short, another roll back, another explode harmlessly outside. On the farm, when you threw stones to clear a field, you didn't throw hard, you threw right. Mercer realized the problem wasn't courage, it wasn't speed, it was geometry. The bunker's firing slit wasn't a hole, it was a chute, angled downward, protected. Anything thrown straight at it would bounce out, but if you changed the angle— The idea sounded insane even in his own head. He leaned over to the man beside him and shouted over the gunfire, "They're throwing too flat." The man stared at him like he'd lost his mind. The breakthrough came when a grenade detonated just outside the slit and the machine gun stuttered, not stopped, just momentarily disrupted. Mercer saw dust blow inward. He understood then. The bunker wasn't sealed. It breathed. Air moved in and out through that opening. You didn't need to throw the grenade in. You needed to drop it in. But to do that, you had to throw high, almost vertical. Let gravity do the work. On the farm, that was how you tossed apples into barrels without bruising them. Up, soft, let them fall. Mercer crawled forward until an officer grabbed his webbing and dragged him back. "What are you doing?" the lieutenant yelled. "I can put it in," Mercer shouted. "Everyone thinks they can put it in," the lieutenant snapped. "Get back." "I mean it," Mercer said. "Not straight, high." The officer stared at him, then shook his head. "That's the stupidest thing I've heard today." Mercer tried again. He explained it to a sergeant, then another. He was told to stay in his lane. Infantry doctrine didn't change because a farm kid had a feeling. One man laughed and said, "What, are you going to throw it like a baseball?" Mercer didn't answer. He waited. When a flamethrower team went down, the operator hit before he could fire. The lieutenant looked at Mercer again. "You get one grenade. You miss, that's it." Mercer nodded. He crawled forward, alone. He didn't sprint. He didn't charge. He moved low, slow, deliberate. When he reached the throwing point, he pulled the pin and stood just enough to see the slit. The machine gun fired. Mercer didn't throw hard. He threw high. The grenade rose above the bunker, almost lazy, then dropped straight down. There was a half-second of silence. Then the bunker exploded from the inside. When the smoke cleared, the gun was silent. They took 3 more bunkers that afternoon, all the same way. By nightfall, Mercer had personally dropped grenades into 32 Japanese positions in just over 2 hours. Command took notice fast. Officers demanded explanations. Mercer showed them, awkwardly, without terminology, just angles and instinct. Tests were run. It worked. Casualties dropped immediately. The technique spread informally at first, then officially. Infantry manuals were quietly amended. Training adapted. The enemy noticed too. Japanese reports described bunkers being destroyed unnaturally. Defensive positions once considered nearly invulnerable were falling rapidly. Mercer became a target. On his 4th day using the technique, he was wounded by shrapnel, evacuated, survived. The trick lived on without him. After the war, Daniel Mercer went home. He didn't give interviews. He didn't write memoirs. He took over the farm, married, had children. When asked about the war, he said little. "I just threw it right," he once told a neighbor. His name never became famous, but his idea saved thousands. Sometimes the difference between life and death isn't courage or technology. Sometimes it's a farm boy noticing what everyone else missed and having the nerve to throw it differently.